Hey guys, all right, we're going to talk about the 2023 predictions for the Seattle area. And this is going to encompass the real estate market, jobs, other random predictions about Seattle.
Big predictions.
Yeah, but before we get into that, we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel. You can click the button below, and then you will know when every video gets posted.
That's the first time you've ever said that.
I know.
Wow. Hypnotized.
Hypnotized.
Hypnotized, bamboozled. Early in 2022, people overpaid for houses.
Right.
They don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
And now heading into 2023, people are scared.
Right.
So we're going to talk about what we know, why we know it, where we know it from. And it's not just housing. It's going to be housing, jobs, and everything.
Okay, so kind of get into, Jason, like you're the numbers guy. Talk about where we're currently at in 2022.
Prices are about, depending on the neighborhood. So you could be in Seattle or Bellevue or Kirkland or Issaquah. Houses are, in some neighborhoods, 10 to 25% below where they were then. And so what does that mean?
Where they were when?
Where they were in the early part of the year.
Okay.
So what does that mean? So if it was $1 million house, your house in some neighborhoods could be worth $750,000 or $800,000. So if you're a buyer and you bought at that $1 million price point, all of a sudden your house is worth $800,000.
You're underwater.
Well, you may be underwater depending on what you did in your mortgage, right? So you may not be, you may feel like you're underwater, but you're not actually underwater. You're just really uncomfortable. So now going into 2023, buyers don't want that to happen.
Right.
So our job is to protect you from that, give you all of our knowledge. And I think the biggest thing that has happened in people's mind beyond price point is interest rates.
Earlier in the spring, we were at like 3% for interest rates, which is like insanely low.
At those 3% numbers that we all kind of got used to in some ways, even us, some people are at like 2.65. Those never really existed except for in that time in history.
Crazy.
So I know we've said it before, forget about those. But now we've actually come down a little bit. As we're heading into the end of 2022 and thinking about 2023, interest rates had peaked at about 7%.
And that's when everyone was freaking out. Like, the market's crashing.
Yep.
You know, just like the real estate market just took a dead halt.
Yeah, and a lot of that is controlled by the media. A lot of that's controlled by the Fed, and it's scared a ton of people. And you cannot, the psychological impact that this has had on buyers and sellers, like, you can't even talk about. Like, it's so massive right now. And so going into 2023, as interest rates come down, now we're in, if you're looking at a conventional loan, right, versus a jumbo loan, buying a big house, which you may be looking at in the Seattle area, a bigger loan, interest rates are in the low 6s or even in the low 5s. So the psychological impact already is like, wow, interest rates are coming down. And if you look in the media all over right now, more loans are happening now because interest rates are already coming down by 1%.
Right.
So that's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and you kind of pair that with the fact that houses are not selling, so prices are coming down. It's actually a really good time for people to be buying a house. I mean, in the Seattle area. Prices are historically low compared to the past, 12 months. Interest rates are starting to creep down. Like, it's so hard to get past that psychological thing where people are so scared. But like, if I could just like shake some people and be like, now is the time, do it.
But I have an undergrad in psychology.
Yeah.
And Molly hates when I say that. But I mean, there's so much truth to like what's happening in the media is impacting all of us.
Yeah.
And it's not just like on the news. It's on your Twitter feed. It's on your Instagram feed. It's in your Facebook world. All that stuff is talking about beware of the real estate industry. But we know, so if you look at some of the data, so like from time to time, I'll talk about the NAR, which is the
National Association of Realtors.
NAR. And they do so much research, and they're a good resource for us as real estate agents. And they are already saying that 2023 will be relatively flat, meaning prices will kind of stay the same. They may go up 1%, they may go down 1%, but relatively flat. But then as you get into 2024, they're expecting prices to go up 5%.
Okay, so
what does that mean?
Take that information and just like super high level. Right now, prices are low. They're going to stay lower, maybe flat, up 1% over the next 12 months, and then they're going to go up 5%. So when is a good time to buy? 2023.
Yep.
early 2023 when prices are already lower right now.
And we are already anticipating that, again, in the Seattle market, when you get to early spring, which is actually winter still, early spring meaning like
February.
Like February, March, April, there will be people who want to buy houses. So I can almost guarantee with my crystal ball, by the time we get to April, May, because the news outlets report stuff that's already happened, once we get to April or May, and when they're talking about February, March, we will see that the real estate market has picked up.
Yeah, there's a little uptick. We kind of glossed over and didn't really get into it how, the media has portrayed the real estate market as doomsday. Explain why we are not at even close to the same position as 2008 when there was a legit crash.
Well, the problem with 2008 and 2009 is that people were getting loans when they shouldn't have been approved for loans. It's like, I need $1 million loan. Here's your $1 million loan. Can you afford it? Don't worry about it. Right?
Yeah.
So people didn't have equity in their houses. So if you're watching this, I'm assuming you know what equity is.
Well, if you don't, I'll explain it real quick. So basically, you buy your house for $1 million. You got a $700,000 loan. So you put down $300,000. Your loan's $700,000. You've paid it off over the course of 10 years. You only owe $500,000 on your house, but your house is valued at $1 million. That means you have $500,000 in equity in your house.
Right. Homeowners in the Seattle area have 63% equity in their homes.
That's incredible. That they're in a safe spot.
But what that means too is people don't want to, they're not necessarily going to sell their house because they have all this equity, and they're going to be going from a 3% loan because people who were smart in this time refinanced, and they're going to be going into, even if interest rates come down to 5%, they don't want to trade a 3% loan for a 5% loan. So what that means is there'll be less homes on the market. And because even though we expect things to be flat, you'll still have less to choose from.
Right. So
does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Less inventory. Buyers will tick up a bit in the spring. So it will get slightly competitive. So honestly, if you're thinking of buying in the Seattle area in 2023, the earlier the better, right? Honestly.
Well, I'd look at it a couple ways. The earlier the better, meaning now, even at the end of 2022.
December, when no one's thinking of buying because it's the holidays. Yeah. Right now's your chance to get in and scoop something up.
Think about your mom friend world, right? You have no chance of doing anything besides taking care of your family right now.
Right.
No
Christmas
chance.
shopping, holiday parties, all that. Everyone's distracted. So, honestly, in a perfect world, December's probably the best time for someone to be buying.
Yeah.
They're not competing with anybody.
Yeah. But I think the biggest thing across where, so you take interest rates, there's going to be a lack of inventory, but what people are afraid of, and I know this even from my brother Larry, right? Affordability was the number one issue.
Right.
Because before you were going to buy, you wanted to, again, I know this sounds big, these numbers sound big if you don't live in the Seattle area, but you wanted to buy $1 million house, which is pretty normal around here. You wanted to buy $1 million house and interest rates were at 3%, and you're stretching to do that. And even though the market came back a little bit, you still have $1 million taste, right?
Yeah.
So you have your $1 million taste, but interest rates are now at 5%. Therefore, you can't buy as much as you wanted, which becomes an affordability issue. And do you want to take a step back and say, well, I want to look in a different area?
Yeah.
When your dream was to live in Bellevue or Kirkland or the areas that are closer in, and all of a sudden you're like, well, the house now that I want is in Everett or it's further out, which they're all fine areas.
Yeah.
But again, you go back to the psychological issue or the psychological factor. It's not what you dreamed of.
Right. Big tech companies started doing huge layoffs.
Remember, Molly is an overactor. So it's true. Meta, Facebook, Amazon, those are the big companies that announce they're doing layoffs.
Right.
Amazon said, go do your over-exaggeration thing.
Amazon's laying off 13, or was that Meta? Amazon's laying 10,000 people off. 10,000. Meta's laying off 13,000 people. And this is the psychological factor with the media also being like, oh my God, these huge layoffs. But what's the reality of it?
They're not really here. Amazon will be laying off people in the Seattle area, but Amazon's everywhere. And they haven't even said the amount of people that will be laid off in Seattle. And Meta, Facebook, we all know is in Palo Alto, California, right? So they are laying off most of their people there, and it will impact Seattle, but the numbers they've given is, and if you're impacted by this, it sucks.
Yeah.
But it's several hundred, not 13,000. So
right.
Remember that there are layoffs, and at the end of the year, every year, we were talking about this before we pushed record, that hiring slows down everywhere this time of year.
I mean, it's like
everywhere.
Clockwork. It's a formula. And in November, companies start doing their layoffs so that their books can look better for the next year. But also, okay, so with the layoffs, then there's also some hiring happening in Seattle because we have all these tech workers who are being laid off. There's other tech companies who are scooping them right up.
Right. And so, like, again, 2 years ago, I didn't even know what TikTok was, let alone they're gobbling up employees that are being laid off from other companies in the Seattle area.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of companies that will be hiring, but I think, again, like Molly's saying, the media is telling you it's doomsday across the board, but think about the reality, and those companies will be hiring again. If you look historically, part of the reason why houses are so expensive in this area is because of tech workers. Like Amazon stock, if you look at it now, is it's probably less than 50% of what it was. So people who used to have, I had $500,000 to put as a down payment to make my mortgage smaller. Now they have $150,000. So their buying power is less.
Right.
And again, going back to affordability. But it will bounce back.
It will bounce back. It always does. Okay, so we kind of know what the market's going to do, what the predictions are for next year. Job predictions, it's going to get better. Let's just talk about some fun predictions. Okay. What's going to happen in Seattle in 2023?
Okay. All I could if you haven't noticed behind me, I'm a big sports fanatic. So can I at least start with some sports predictions?
Go for it. Knock yourself out.
Okay, so for the last, how long have you lived here for?
About 13 years.
For the last 13 years, 12 of them I have said it's the Mariners' year.
Every year without fail, Jason and Ty are like, it's their year. It's their year. It's never their year.
What happened last year?
It was kind of their year.
It was kind of their year. And they're getting better. So I am predicting the Mariners go back to the playoffs. They're not going to win the World Series, but they're back in the playoffs.
Okay, so you're being realistic.
Being realistic. And our new hockey team, which we're all new to, the Seattle Kraken,
yep,
again, will make the playoffs this year in their second year in history.
Okay.
And we are going to a game pretty soon.
Okay, so what about the Seahawks? Do you think they'll go to the playoffs? They're actually doing really well.
I think the
Seahawks Russell Wilson.
Yeah, so it's interesting because if we're talking about 2023, the Seahawks season, the playoffs are basically in 2023.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But if we're talking about next year's Seahawks.
No. I'm talking about this year's Seahawks.
This year's Seahawks is so borderline. I will give them a wild card, which they'll make the playoffs and they'll lose their first game.
What?
But next year,
I think they'll win the first game.
Let's go with her prediction then.
Okay. First and foremost, Taylor Swift is coming this
really?
summer.
Is that a prediction?
Well,
That's a fact.
because it's been such a debacle getting tickets. Like, so many children are going to have a sad Christmas morning because they're not getting Taylor Swift tickets because no one can get them. I think she's going to add more shows. We already have 2 scheduled in Seattle. I think she's going to add another one to let people go, okay? Here's the other prediction for all you families, parents, moms, and whatnot. Our weather has been crazy this year. It's December and we have snow on the ground, and that never happens. Literally never. And so I think we are in for a pretty brutal winter.
So brutal winter meaning like
more
in a few months
snow,
from now? Or
I think it's going to just continue through March. We're going to get these random snowflakes. And when it snows in Seattle, everything shuts down, which means kids are out of school with snow days. So I'm telling all of you parents right now to get prepared. Get all your crayons and your slime stuff and your crafts and anything you can do to keep those kids occupied, because it's going to hit us left and right these snow days.
Okay, so historically, I remember it used to, like, as a kid here in the 80s, I'm old, it would snow like a few days and we'd get like a couple inches of snow and that was it. So if you're moving here from like Michigan or New York or something like that and you're like, you got a half inch of snow and everything's closed down, there are reasons for it, for real.
Yeah, we don't have like salt trucks and they don't plow or anything like that. It's hilly, so it is tough to drive. Here's the other thing.
Hold on a second. We live in a place called
Rose Hill,
which is a big hill, and even going down to our daughter's school, there's an incline, and
like right at the entrance of the school, like buses slide all the time.
Yeah. So there's reason. It is for safety, and it's more than just the snow. It's more the ice. Okay. On the hills in Rose Hill.
Yes. So if you are moving here or if you live here, go get a snow shovel very early in the season because they all sell out. Like the first snow, they all sell out because we don't keep many in stock because it never snows here. This year it will. That's my prediction.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up. So the predictions in the housing market in 2022 as we go into 2023, it will remain flat in 2023. A really good time to think about buying, and then you can refinance at a later date like everybody does anyways. Yep. Our jobs predictions are tech companies are laying off. It's not as crazy as you think in Seattle. There are really good jobs if you're highly qualified, including TikTok.
Yep.
And Taylor Swift is coming to town.
Taylor, and I guess our sports teams are all going to do really well this year.
They're all going to do really, really well. So if you guys are thinking about moving to Seattle, we would love it if you would consider us as a resource in your home search. And if you live here in town, think of us to help you sell your home.
And don't forget to subscribe below.
Go Taylor Swift.